Is it working? Okay, hi guys, and welcome. Welcome back. Some more Journey to Angoro card reviews. Yeah, more cards. Basically, another batch of cards have been released with this week. So, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and review them. We have a very new, interesting spells, very new, interesting minions, new quests, new legendaries. So I'm very excited to present them all to you. I'm going to try my best to make these videos a little bit shorter, but the problem is that I see the cars and I start going in some sort of like a ramble about it, so I just never end and spend like 3 or 4 minutes talking about just one single card. Some of those cards are very interesting and they do deserve a full talk, but some of the others are just like, kind of max. I should move on to them a little bit faster. Note I did close my door to my room this time, so there's no risk of a giant monster coming in and sweeping me away, as some of you were concerned in the previous episode. So let's go on ahead. First off, we have a new Warlock legendary, and that is Clutch Mother Zavas. 2 mana, 2/2. Whenever you discard this, give it +2/+2 and return it to your hand, and it's a beast. So yeah, a pretty solid card, a very good card that synergizes with discard mechanics, and considering the quests that have been, the quest for Warlock that has been released with the Nether portal that requires you to discard 5 cards, and also considering the already existing discard cards and the already existing cards that synergizes with discard cards. And here I mention Malkazar's Imp and Silverwell Golem. This is a very good addition to Discard Zoo. Uh, yeah, it's basically just a thing that will keep on growing as you keep discarding it, and you're not going to be mad that you discard it, as an important card basically. Initially, I thought that it also gets on the board as well as getting +2/+2 and being returned to hand, basically allowing it to have like infinite value, but that would be a little bit too busted, I think. So I think what it does is just it keeps with every time it is targeted by a discard, it instead of being discarded, it just it receives a buff in hand. Then that's how it practically works. So it allows you to have like a bigger tempo push into like the later stages of like the game, similar to like a Van Cleef. You can become a 2 mana 6/6 or a 2 mana 8/8 in like turn 4 or turn 5 or something along those lines. And yeah, it's pretty strong. Some people have been complaining about it, about the idea that it's the games in which you get this into your opening hand or very early in the game are going to be way more powerful than the games in which you don't draw it, or it's in like the bottom half of the game. And I kind of agree with that. But yeah, it's I guess many of the swingy cards are kind of like this. See Kazakis, see Reno Jackson, see a few others. It's also a beast, which makes it very interesting to synergize with cards like Curator. So you could, make get a benefit from drawing it from Curator. Not sure if there's other beast synergies in Warlock. I don't think so, but it's pretty cool. It's a nice addition, but it's a very swingy card indeed, and they have to be careful with that. In arena is not really that great because it's unlikely that you're gonna get that many discard cards to benefit with it. But if you can, then it can do maybe a little bit of work. But I don't think so much. Next up, we have a new warlock spell, a rare spell, a 2 mana corrupting mist, which corrupts every minion. And for those of you who don't know what corruption does, it also adds an explanation: destroy them at the start of your next turn. So it's basically like a doomsayer, only that it's like a spell, so it's not the body. So it's sort of like a delayed board clear, a 1 turn delay board clear, and it's very interesting, and I do like this card being introduced. I think it's a little bit Maybe a little bit powerful for 2 mana. If I were to design it, I'd probably put it at 3, but it remains to be seen. The fact that it's a delayed board clears are similar with like corruption, and why nobody plays it is because the player, like the opposing player, can still attack with all their minions, and then they will lose them at the end of their turn. It's slightly worse than Doomsayer because they can, even if they lose their current minions, they can still play more minions, to replace them. Whereas in the case of Doomsayers, you don't want to play more minions because you will lose them as well. But still, if this card could be combined with something like a freeze effect, like Frost Nova, for example, if you could get it from Mage, or if as a Mage you can get this, or maybe from Kazakus, a freeze effect from Kazakus, then it's a pretty powerful board clear, a pretty powerful 2 card board clear. But exactly how frequent you can get Frost Nova Doomster, that's about as frequent as you'll get these, only worse. So it's still a pretty interesting card to get. I think it's maybe better in the arena. I think you can pretty much guarantee get a board clear in there. It's important to know that it says corrupt every minion, so you're gonna lose your minions as well. So that's a little bit of a downside. I guess that makes it more worth it for 2 mana instead of 3. But still, it's a very cool color design. But I don't think unless you get some specific card combos like a very powerful taunt or a freeze effect, I don't think it's gonna be all that great. Moving on ahead, we have a new priest rare card, a 1 mana 1/1 elemental. There's been new elementals put in the game, and they also have seen the synergies that are going to be available with elementals. I'm going to present them a little bit later. Crystalline Oracle, Death Rattle, copy a card from your opponent's deck and add it to your hand. So, just a very simple card generator kind of card, similar to like Shifting Shade that already yields. Similar, you can say, to like Babbling Book, only that it's a death rattle instead of a battle cry, so you do have to wait in order to get it. But the fact that it's a death rattle is also an advantage because it helps with the priest quest, and it's a cheap death rattle. You can get it early on. It puts a body on the board, and it also generates value later on, like Swashbuckler, like Babbling Book, and as we have seen those cards being played. I do think this card is going to be played just as well, but probably only in the Death Rattle Priest. I don't think it's gonna be good enough to, be an auto include in all the Priest decks. But as a in the Death Rattle Priest, I think it's a solid card. It's a body that generates value. It's a Death Rattle, and yeah, it's an elemental, I guess. I'm not sure if there's any elemental synergies in Priest, but I think that's good enough as it is. And I think it's pretty playable for Arena as well. If you can get it on turn 1, it's something more than you can trade with, and that you can get a little bit of extra juice out of it. Next up is a card that I really, really like, and I'm very glad that I have introduced a card like this. I really like the design of it, and this is the Curious Glimmer Root, a 3 mana 3/3 battle cry. Look at free cards, free random cards, similar to Discovery Effect, but they are random. Guess which one start in your opponent's deck to get a copy of it. So I really like this card because it really rewards players who know and can think about the meta, who know and have knowledge and high guessing capabilities about the meta, because it's a slightly below average free drop, but it gives you a bonus in case you know the meta and what to expect from your opponent's deck, and it also gives you a little bit of information about the deck, obviously. But yeah, I really like this kind of card. As I said, it does reward players who are more familiar with the game, so it kind of makes a slight separation between, like, noobs and players who have played the game for a little bit of time. It's not that effective in like low rank play and in arena, because you're not gonna get uh, that much of a consistent result. You know, there are more random cards tossed around there, so I wouldn't recommend playing this card if you're at a low rank, or picking it if you play in arena. Although it could still work. And yeah, there's also a little bit of a problem because this card will be competing with Cabal Talent Priest, which is a very powerful free drop for Priest, and it's pretty much a staple. So I don't know if it's gonna be good enough to replace it. So I really like the card. I really like the design of it, but I do feel that it's gonna be just another burgly bully. Just a cool card with a cool effect that will probably never see any play, since there's already Draconite Operative, which guarantees you the discover effect. It gives you even more information about the opponent's deck, and it has a more solid body. It does have the condition to have a dragon in your hand, and it's 5 mana, but still, you cannot really compare it with this card. Still, as I said, very interested, and I'm glad it exists. Right, moving on ahead, we have some new elementals, some very interesting new elemental cards. First off, we have a neutral Firefly, a 1 mana 1/2 that adds at the battle cry another 1 mana 1/2 elemental to your hand. And yeah, it's I think it's okay. Not sure if it's good enough for constructed, because cards in constructed are way more busted than this. Technically speaking, they do add up to like a 2 mana 2/4, which is above average as stats, and it's also spread around 2 bodies, so you can get like multiple trades in like a zoo deck. And you can use them to like fill out the curve if you don't have any other cards, so they are more flexible in that regard. They are obviously weaker to board clear instead of being like a one card, but if they were a one card, then it would be more weaker to like a 1 mana removal spell. But still, I think they it's a okay card. Let's just put it that way. It's an okay card. I'm not sure if it will see playing constructed just based on its raw stats, but maybe together with the elemental synergies, which we are gonna see some of them coming up. Maybe with those it will be good enough. And I think it's actually fairly decent for arena as well. Not too busted, but just on par. Just something that we can work around with. We also have a new mage spell, a common spell, Flame Gazer, that is 2 mana, deal 2 damage, and also adds another 1 mana 1/2 elemental to your hand. So just a cheap removal spell that gives you an extra bit of like card advantage with the elemental, and more synergies with the elementals that will be released. As I said, it's obviously weaker than other removal effects like Frostbolt. Arcane Blast will be removed from standard, unfortunately, and that was a very powerful one, and I'm not sure they're gonna add something similar to the power level. So it's kind of like Jade Shuriken, only that it adds the elemental to your hand instead of the board. But that is good because, as I said, it can give you more flexibility to play with other cards, and it can unlock further synergies with the elementals. So it's an okay card. Similar to the previous one, I'm not sure if it's good enough to be played in constructed, but I think it's pretty good to be played in arena, and it might be good enough for constructed if more elemental synergies come out. Next up, we have Glacial Shard. 1 mana, 2/1, elemental, Valkyrie, freeze an enemy, not an enemy minion. I thought to say, but no, it's an enemy. So yeah, just another solid 1 drop, I could say. It has good stats for a 1 drop. It's an elemental, and it has a Balcry freeze effect. I'm not sure what you can ask more from a 1 drop. It's a very balanced, well statted 1 drop. Now the problem is that there are way more powerful one drops out there that compete for this one. But hopefully, if the power level goes down a little bit, I think this could be a solid card for constructed in an elemental deck. It might be almost playable in a non-elemental deck, kind of like a tech card, but and not really so much. Let's be realistic. You'll only run this if you want to make an elemental deck, and it might be pretty good in that. With and it's also freezing an enemy, so you can also freeze the opponent's face if you're playing against a warrior that has a weapon. So that might be pretty good, and it's very solid for arena as well. I guess the only downside that I might add to this is that it's not very good to play on turn one because you don't get full benefit from its battle cry, similar to like Voodoo Doctor, for example. But that might not be necessarily true. I guess you can freeze like a rogue or a shaman or a warrior that can have a weapon, and in that case, if you freeze their face on turn one, they cannot like coin a weapon or a dagger, so they cannot remove it. So you ensure that it stays on board, and you can follow up with a 2-drop. So I think it's playable for arena just in that regard, and if not, you keep it for a later occasion where you can provide just like a cheap freeze effect together with the body, which I think is pretty solid. Right, moving on ahead, we have a new powerful weapon removal that will spill even more doom to all the pirate warrior out there. There is the Glutinous Ooze, 3 mana, free Battlecry, destroy your opponent's weapon, and gain armor equal to its attack. So, yeah, just a very powerful weapon removal. It's way better than the not the acidic swamp ooze, but the toxic swamp ooze or whatever has been released in Ministries of Gadgetzan, the 3 mana 4/3 that reduces the durability by one. Pretty much nobody played that, and it was picked in arena just because of stats. This one is slightly weaker as stats, but it completely destroys the weapon, so that's a very much bigger bonus compared to like just reducing one durability, and it gives you armor equal to attack, so it gives you like more defensive possibilities. You can destroy like a fiery war axe, which is very good, and you gain like 3 health or maybe 4 if it has like a it has been upgraded. You can destroy an Arcanite Reaper, which is a lot of tempo and gain 5 armor. So I think with this card and with all the other cards, I think Pirate Warriors are going to have just way too much competition to face. This card might be so strong that it might even replace acidic swamp ooze as a tech card in the decks that run this kind of tech cards against weapon decks. It's just that good to destroy a weapon and gain armor. Not exactly sure, it's a little bit more expensive and worse statted, but it just might. Now the problem with this card, is that and the rant that I'm gonna make with Pirate Warrior over here is that it's very easy to make a deck that just counters one deck. In this case, Pirate Warrior. You can make right now a deck that counters Pirate Warrior. You just make a priest deck in which you put like 2 Mistress of Mixtures, 2 Potion of Madness, 2 Flash Heals, 2 Priest of the Feasts, 2 Doomsayers, 2 Acidic Swampoos, and you put all this like very cheap, very efficient removal and heal, and they can't really do much against you. But the problem is that you're going to lose against almost any other control deck that you're gonna face. So that's generally the problem with these kind of cards that are released to counter just a very specific deck archetype or deck meta. It counters it, but it becomes less effective against other decks. In arena, its epics are not gonna see that often. There are probably better epics out there, but in case you don't have anything else to choose, I mean, it's kind of like a MC Tech, I guess you can call it. You know, it might provide a tempo swing at the right time, but it's probably going to be played just as a free mana, 3/3/4 tempo. So, you know, not that spectacular. Moving along ahead, we have a new paladin card, Hydrologist, 2 mana 2/2. Murloc, discover a secret. So, a new Murloc, it's fine, it's okay. We have Murlocs, and this is a pretty interesting Murloc that can also give you a little bit of a refill. And it discovers a secret, so it's a pretty nice effect. And because the secret is discovered, you know, you can have a little bit more flexibility with choosing your secrets, and you can have a little bit you're gonna put your opponent in a little bit more trouble into figuring out what secrets you're running. Now the problem is that Paladin hasn't been really been playing a lot of secrets recently, but who knows, maybe this will make it back. It's kind of debatable, you know, because Murloc Knight is rotating out, and I don't think this is good enough to play in a non-Murloc deck. So just for the discover a secret value. So cool card. Definitely played in arena. I think it's a decent card for arena, and it's gonna see play there, but probably not good enough for constructed. So we're just gonna leave it at that. Then we have the new Shaman Legendary, an 8 mana 7/7. Glad it's not 4 mana. Battle Cry, if you played an elemental last turn, cast an elemental invocation. So this is the first kind of card that showcases the elemental synergies. Basically, the elemental synergy works around having played an elemental on the turn before, and that is very good because you know it doesn't force you to have an elemental on hand in the hand or on the board. You just have to play it on the turn before, and that's a lot of an easier requirement to fulfill. But it will also force you to like think ahead of your turns, and that is pretty good. Bringing more thinking into Hearthstone is the way to go instead of just going 1, 2, 3 curve face meta that has been so far. Now, for the elemental invocations, there are four of them. There is Invocation of Air, which deals 3 damage to all minions. Invocation of Earth, which fills your boards with 1/1 elementals. Invocation of Fire, which deals 6 damage to the enemy hero, and Invocation of Water, which restores 12 health to your hero. Now, I'm not sure. I'm right now seeing on the FAQ you do get to choose which invocation is played. You know, I was about to say that I'm not sure if it casts it at random or if you get to choose it. If it was at random, then I don't think it's gonna be that good because it can really screw up with your business. But because you can choose which invocation is played, then it's a little bit better. You know, you can clear the board similar to like an abyssal enforcer. You can fill up your board to prepare for like a bloodlust. You can use it as a finisher, or you can use it to restore health and you know, keep you up in the game. Now the problem is that it's like a very high cost minion, and that's the issue with it. So yeah, it's going to be, you know, in an aggressive meta, it's not going to be that great, and in a regular meta, I'm not exactly sure if the invocations are really strong enough. I think they should be, but I've had very bad experiences with like Jade Druid, and that's why I just have very high problems with evaluating this card. It's technically a solid card. It's a very good legendary, but it will have to be used in a more control meta, basically. And control shaman, well, maybe it will see the rise over here, but it remains to be seen. I think it's a bit bare for arena, considering stats and invocation. But in arena, you know, it's gonna be harder to get an elemental. so it's gonna be slightly less consistent there, compared to constructed. But that's the comparison between like stats, power level, and the constructed and arena basically. As I said, I think it might see play in some constructed decks, maybe control decks. That's what I wanted to say. Next up, we have a new epic druid spell, 5 mana. Living Mana is called. Transform your mana crystal into 2/2 minions. Recover the mana when they die. So this is a very interesting card with a very interesting functionality, and I'm kind of glad that these kind of cards are introduced. They do provide more, more interesting combination and dynamics. So I assume that if you cast it, I assume that it transforms your mana crystals, whatever they are, field or not field. So you can basically cast it this on turn 5 to obtain 5 2/2s, which is technically better than what you would generally obtain for 5 mana. You know, you have Force of Nature, which is free 2/2s, or you have like uh, Doppelgangster, which is again free 2/2s. So in this case, you'd obtain 5 of them, and with Druid, you have other things that can buff them or give them like buffings with like Savage Roar or stuff like that. Now the problem is indeed that you lose the mana and you get a reset very, very heavily behind. You can basically lose all your mana if you play it like on 7 or more, and it will just fill up the board. But it's you do get it back when you kill them. So it's kind of like it's a bit hard to evaluate. You have to really think about it, because you use it, you spend all your mana, and then what you're gonna do? Are you going to trade with them just to get your mana back? Then you haven't really done much of a business. I guess it's okay to trade with them. They're not gonna be that bad, but uh, yeah, it's kind of weird. Do you use it to make a tempo swing on the board and regain the board? Do you want to push for more damage with Savage Roar and mm, other spells like that? Well, you're not gonna have mana to cast them, so mm, it's kind of interesting. It remains to be seen. I was hoping that maybe Zoo Druid would come out with the previous expansion, Ministries of Gadgets, and there have been some good cards for that, but it didn't take off, much to my surprise. So that's why I'm hesitant into saying that this card is gonna be good and it's gonna make Zoo Druid take off. It might, but I'm not entirely convinced about it. So yeah, it remains to be seen. For Arena, it's I guess it's just an okay card. I'm not gonna call it like busted. I don't think it's that bad, but it's just basically okay. Next up, we have a new Paladin spell, Lost in the Jungle, 1 mana, summon 2 1/1 Silver Hand recruits. So, very similar to Alley Cat that they have for Hunter. It's a decent, balanced 1 mana spell. It gives a total of 2/2 worth of stats. For 1 mana, which is technically balanced. That's what 1 mana is worth it. 1 mana is worth 2/2 worth of stats, but it's spread on 2 bodies, so it benefits from buffs, and it benefits from like paladin buffs, and it benefits from uh, like Steward of Darkshire, for example. We might see a research in like a Zoo Paladin maybe, but it's also weaker to a board clear, so you have to keep that in mind. But and it's also like the problem is that it's a spell, so it doesn't benefit from all the hand buffing cards that have been released for Paladin in the previous expansion. So I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna be played, what kind of deck archetype should be out for Paladin to play this card, but it's a good card for Arena, so I guess we can at least give it a that. It's a good Arena card. Next up, we have a new Mage Secret, Mana Bind. 3 mana, obviously since it's a Mage Secret, when your opponent casts a spell, add a copy to your hand that costs 0. So it's kind of like a mirror entity, just that you don't trigger the spell immediately because you might not have what to play it on. You just get a copy of it in your hand and you can play it anytime. I think it's an overall good spell, and it's nice that new spells like these, new secrets like this are released, because it forces the opponent once again to think more about what kind of play arounds they should make, what do they risk to give your opponent for free in terms of spells, more secrets that interact with spells. So it's I think it's fine. I think it's a relatively fine and balanced spell and secret, and yeah. uh, Now, it's a secret. I haven't seen secrets played in Mage in like forever, so I'm not sure if it's gonna see play anyway. But if a secret Mage deck comes out there, then maybe you might see this card in there. Just hopefully, I guess. Probably. Maybe not. Who knows? Next up, we have a new rogue card, 3 mana Mimic Pod. Draw a card and add a copy of it to your hand. So similar to TSLT, but it costs 3 mana and it adds a copy, only one copy to it. So another card that allows you to generate more value in a value-driven game. And unlike TSLT, I think this is a little bit better because it costs less, so you don't like risk, you don't have your hand very clunky with having like a 6 mana spell, the TSLT, and you have to play it and you draw that card, and you very rarely are able to play anything else with it. This one is a little bit cheaper, so you can use it a little bit easier with combos. So it might see some play in some new rogue decks that are gonna come out with the new rogue quest that has been released, and we're gonna go and look at it in just a bit. But as a standalone, it's probably not good enough, because once again you don't really have control of what card you're gonna get a copy of. So you might get a copy of something that it's not particularly interesting. And similar in arena, it's a card that is good in like a value game, in a sort of like drawn out control value game, but not so interesting into a tempo game or in an aggressive meta that has been dominating arena. So I mean, constructed so far. So it remains to be seen. Have another priest card, the Mirage Caller, 3 mana 2/3. Valkyrie, choose a friendly minion, summon a 1/1 copy of it. So similar to Barnes or Shadowcaster, just that you have more control over it, unlike Barnes, because you can choose what minion to summon. Now, the problem with it is that it's below stated minion, and it's pretty bad to play it on like nothing, and that's one of the problems with it. And once again, it has a very high competition with Cabal Talent Priest, which is very good and would probably be better to cast it on like a different minion. But it does have the advantage, it does have synergy with Death Rattle minions. Obviously, if you can summon another 1/1 copy of a Death Rattle minion, of a minion that has a strong Death Rattle, like Twilight Summoner, or the new 1 mana 1/1, or other powerful Death Rattle minions, then I think it's relatively good. It's not as expensive as the Priest Legendary that has been released in Whispers of the Old Gods, that I pretty much forgot its name, considering just how much it has been played. But yeah, it's okay, but it has a lot of competition, so it's very doubtful if it will see play, and if it will only see play in Death Rattle Priest for the quest. That's my overall opinion and judgment on this card. A little bit bare for arena, but with the same conditions of having something good to hang it upon. Moving on ahead, we have Molten Blade, a new warrior weapon. 1 mana, 1/1. Each turn this is in your hand, transform it into a new weapon. So, very cool, very interesting new weapon, similar to like Shifter Xeris, but it's for weapons. You obviously have a smaller like pool of weapons that you can get out of it, so you can it's a little bit more controlled, you can say, but it's also it's a cool random effect and you can get all sorts of like different weird combination, and you're gonna be probably sure that it's gonna be some sort of tavern brawl related to this weapon. Now the problem is that if you're gonna have too many of these weapons, then they're not really that good because you might be forced to override them. So yeah, that might be problematic, and you don't really want it in like an aggressive deck because you want to have a very solid weapon on curve. You don't want it in a control deck because you want to have the weapon that you can rely on. And yeah, it's just basically another meme card. That's what I'm trying to get to. Another cool meme card that will probably see some highlights in troll den videos and probably not see much play everywhere else. Alright, we still have a lot more cards to go, so we have to speed things up quite a lot. We have a new legendary, a new neutral legendary, Ozruk, 9 mana, 5/5 elemental, taunt. Battlecry gain +5 health for each elemental you played last turn. So once again, the elemental synergy with elementals you played last turn. So you can basically get a giant taunt monstrosity like a 9 mana 5/10 or 5/15 or 5/20 or something like that, which is gonna spill the end for any aggro deck that doesn't have some sort of like hard removal. But here comes the problems. As I said, 9 mana, you're probably not going to survive against an aggro deck. Control deck, they're probably going to have a removal for it, a hard removal for it. So yeah, that's kind of the problems with it. I think if you want to have like a solid taunt, you're way better off playing Saw because that cannot be targeted by spells. So you're much certain that it will stick on the board and provide a 10 taunt value compared to Osrook. So probably not going to see much play if I were to give my honest opinion. Have a new neutral Murloc, Primal Fiend Lookout, 3 mana, 3/2. The battle cry, if you can control another Murloc, discover a Murloc, and it's a Murloc. So it's more Murloc synergy, and it's sort of like a Murloc synergy that allows you to get more consistent late game Murlocs, have acts like sort of like a tempo refill. If you control a Murloc, it has a slightly below average body, but it gives you more cards in hand, and there are Murlocs that can generate more Murlocs. There's also like Call in the Finisher from Shaman, which can make 4 Murlocs. So it's what I'm trying to say is that might be relatively likely for you to control a Murloc in order to get the value out of it. Now the problem is with the Murloc decks that I wanted to mention in the last one is that first off everything is awesome is gonna rotate out, so you're gonna lose a very powerful card that Shaman had for Murloc synergy, and also Tiny Fin is also going to roll out, which you might not think that is very relevant, but in the context of a card like this, having a 0 mana card that just activates this synergy could have been, something to consider. And also knowing that the Murloc in whatever the big Murloc legendaries are already in wild since last time. I'm talking about old Murkai. Then you're only hoping for like a war leader or a Finja maybe in order to get like value out of this card. But yeah, it can maybe allow Murloc decks to not be that all out aggressive and instead make them be more of sort of like a mid range sort of stuff. And yeah, I think it's pretty good for Arena as well, considering that it's a common and you can get Murlocs relatively consistently. So yeah, another one we have another priest epic spell, Shadow of Visions, 2 mana, discover a copy of a spell in your deck. So it's kind of like a card draw, but not really. You discover a copy of a spell, so it's it's better than a card draw because it gives you options to choose from what you want to discover, and it doesn't like draw the card from your deck, so it doesn't get you closer to fatigue, but it's limited to spells only, and it costs 2 mana in order to draw it. So yeah, it's good if you're looking for something in particular for that turn, but it's not really kind of like a proactive turn. It's like it's sort of like a, how can I call it, like a situational card, and yeah, I'm not really sure if it's that good. Even though it gives you like extra value, you still have to include this card in your deck in order to get that extra value. So you sacrifice a deck slot in order to get an extra copy of a spell that you get to choose from 3 spells that you have in your deck. So that's how you can think about it. Maybe it can be used in some combo decks. You can like multiply some of the burn spells like Mind Blast with Prophet Velen or Maligos or something like that. But considering that both Shadowfind and Emperor Torisan are rotating out, I don't think this is gonna be that good, and I don't think it's really that good for Arena either, if I were to give my honest opinion. So interesting card, but probably not going to see much play. Have a new Shaman Epic. It's a Stone Sentinel. 7 mana, 4/4. Whoa! The stats are reversed. What is happening? That's incredible. Another elemental battle cry. If you played an elemental last turn, summon two free elementals with taunt. So it's a pretty powerful control card. I guess it basically results in a total of 7 mana, 8-10 worth of stats with a partial taunt and a bigger body. So it's pretty good. Nothing to scoff at, I guess we could say. But yeah, uh, what can I say? It's good for like a elemental control deck, and obviously the shaman has the advantage of having a lot of elemental cards already. But once again, it's not very good against aggro decks. It's pretty late against aggro decks, and it's pretty weak to board clears if you're playing against a control deck. So its utility remains to be seen, but yeah, it's a solid card to provide a tempo push if you don't want to play the Jade stuff basically and play with Jade Chieftain. You can play this, and you're more guaranteed on the results, but less uh, build up for the late game by growing the jades basically. If you can get elementals, then it's also very powerful for arena, but that really depends on how many elementals you can draft in your deck. Have the new Shaman Legendary, which is very interesting. It's kind of a reminder that Keeper of Uldaman is going away. 6 mana, 3/7, Sun Keeper Tarim, Taunt. It's very interesting to me that every legendary that is being released nowadays must have Taunt in order for them to be relevant, because aggro decks are just going to ignore anything else and just go face. Once again, taunt. Battle cry set all other minions attack and held to free. so it can, reduce a giant board of your opponent to something a little bit more manageable. And also you can use it to buff your own like minions, your own silver hand recruits or other smaller minions, to buff them to like free. Now the problem is that against aggro decks you're very likely to buff their minions. Their minions are going to be weaker, so you're very likely to buff them to free. And being at free health is very problematic because you cannot really clear them with consecration. So that's why it doesn't really work out very well. It's pretty good because it can reduce a giant Jade board that can be made in the later turns by Jade Druid. You can reduce something like a 7/7, 8/8, and 9/9 into like free freeze, which is a little bit more manageable. But apart from that fringe scenario, and apart from the fringe scenario in which you have just a giant board full of small minions that you just buff to free, this card is not very good, I think, in my opinion, and it's very situational for arena as well. Uh, Keeper of Uldaman is much better because it's like targeted, kind of like targeted removal. This one it just affects everything, and it's like, eh, mm, eh, that's my exact reaction to this card. Right, we have a new quest. This one is for not Warlock, Rogue. 1 mana, the Caverns Below. Quest: play 4 minions with the same name, so they are getting very, very creative with the quests. And the reward is a Crystal Core, which is a 5 mana spell. Very interesting to me that all the quest rewards are worth 5 mana. Not sure if you noticed, but that's how it works. You're gonna see with the other quests that have been released. And what that does, it basically says for the rest of the game, your minions are 5/5. So once again, the requirement is relatively hard to achieve. You have to either use things like Panda or Shadow Step, or cards that multiply your minions like T and the previous card that has been released, whatever it was its name, Mimic Pod. So you cannot really obtain the quest organically. That's what I'm trying to say. And the reward is, it's kind of it's interesting but kind of questionable. Like, it's pretty good for like Death Rattle minions or Battle Cry minions because those are usually below statted, and getting them for like the solid 5/5 all the time is uh, a little bit better for the board. But that also means that you cannot really make a deck with like big minions. Now those really don't really work in constructed anyway, but even if you had that in mind, and you can no longer do it because they're gonna become 5/5s. And yeah, you still have to play the quest. You still have to play the Crystal Core, which is a 5 mana spell that does nothing when it's played, I guess, unless it also transforms the minion on the board. I'm not particularly sure. So yeah, I can see how this quest can work, but you really have to design a deck around it, and that's the main issue with it. A lot more than with the other quests. So I do think that the Rogue quest is a little bit more of a flop, in my opinion. Moving on ahead, we have the new Hunter quest, which is unfortunately not about dealing 30 damage to face, but it's about playing 1 cost minions. So it's relatively similar, I guess you can say. One mana quest, the Marsh Queen plays 7 1 cost minions, and it summons Queen Karnasa, which is a 5 mana 8/8. Obviously, once again, very powerful body. That what it does is it shuffles 15 raptors into your deck, and the raptors, Karnasa's brood, are 1 mana free twos that draw a card. So a very powerful minion that shuffles a lot of above way above average minions into your deck. So it might have the possibility to contest Jade Druid to a little bit of an extent because it fills up your deck with a lot of cards, 15 cards, and then you can play this card, and because they draw a card, you can play one, and it draws another one, and you play it, and you play it, and you play it, and you fill your board with like free to use. Not as good as filling them with 7/7s and 8/8s like J Druid, but it's still pretty okay. Now the problem is that playing 7/1 cost minions, while it is doable, if you only fill your deck with 1 cost minions from the start, you're gonna run out of cards by turn 4, and you're gonna have to wait a little bit more to complete the quests, and Hunter doesn't really have that good card draw, so you're gonna finish the quest like on turn 6, 7 ish. I guess you also have to consider that you have to play this on turn 1, which prevents you from playing a one cost minion on that turn, which can give you a lot more tempo on the board. So yeah, as before with the quests, it has a very powerful reward, but the condition makes it very hard to judge how easy it is to get it out. Out of the other quests so far, mm, I'm not sure. I think it's kind of like on the level of the priest one, maybe, but I think it remains to be seen. Let me just restart the recording because I'm getting up to my spatial limit. Alright, and we are back. Damn, I said I'd make these videos shorter, but hot damn, is there a lot of things to talk about on these cards. Moving on ahead, we have another anti-aggro card. Like, the amount of anti-aggro cards that have been introduced are just absolutely bonkers. So if the meta does not slow down after this, then you can pretty much say just how busted the aggro cards are. Basically, we have a 4 mana free 5 Tolvir Stone Shaper Battlecry. If you played an elemental last turn, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. So 4 mana free 5, obviously it's a little bit below average as stats, but getting Taunt and Divine Shield gives it a lot of very powerful defensive potential. It forces the opponent to either use some sort of like solid hard removal, or to basically trade a lot more minions to pass through it. And yeah, you just have to play an elemental the turn before, which is not that difficult to achieve, considering that it's turn 4. On turn 3, you can get a cheap 1 mana elemental very easily, and then you have this guy, and you just very solidly lock out most of the aggro decks that don't run, I don't know, silences, I guess. So yeah, I think it's a very good card against aggro decks, and it might be good enough even against control decks because of the divine shield. It can allow you to make some favorable trades. So it's an example of a card that it's not like so one dimensional. You don't like play it against a single deck archetype, and if you're facing anything else, that card is just complete garbage. It just might be good enough to work against both, which kind of puts it on near bust levels, if I'm being honest. And yeah, if you can also get elementals in arena, then it's very insane there as well. Right up ahead, we have Tolvir Warden, a new hunter card, 5 mana free 5 battlecry, draw 2 1 cost minions from your deck. So it technically works with the quest. It's a draw effect and it draws 1 mana minions, but you have to put it in your deck together with like other 1 mana minions, and you have to draw it, and you have to play it with like the other 1 mana minions, and it's like very poorly statted. And I'm not sure that the 1 mana minions are going to be able to compensate for just how poor the stats are. So if it's gonna see play, it's only going to see play in a quest oriented deck, and that's about it with this one. All right, getting close to the end here. We only have 3 more cards left. Next up, we have the Shaman quest. So we have Unite the Murlocs. Summon 10 Murlocs throughout the entire game, and the reward is to get the Mega Fiend, which is a giant 5 mana 8/8, once again similar to the other ones, that fills your hand with random murlocs on battle cry. So it's a very good quest for murloc shaman that I have said can really kick off with some of the other cards that have been released, with like the adapt card and the murloc generator card. With this quest and the mega fin, I think it might be good enough to really kick off. Once again, it is going to be a little bit weaker because it does lose the everything is awesome, but they still have call in the finishers. They still have there still are a lot of powerful murlocs. Once again, the problem with this card is that you have to play the quest on turn 1, and with Murloc decks, you really want to get on board and win more as fast as possible. And sacrificing a turn just to play the quest is it really is kind of painful. So that's why you have to really consider about how you manage this kind of stuff, and you also have to summon 10 murlocs, which is more than in the case of other quests with like death rattles or 1 mana costs. But obviously in case of the murlocs, you do have the advantage that many murlocs summon other murlocs, and there's also calling the finishers, so it's probably a little bit better. And there's also a little bit of a problem with Mega Fin, and that is first off, it fills your hand with random Murlocs, so you can get a bunch of garbage. You can no longer get like 10 Tiny Fiends because it does rotate out, but you can get 10 Murloc Raiders, which are not really that good. So, and the problem is that you would want to play it like a little bit later than turn 5, because otherwise you do risk burning a card. That might not be that bad in case of an aggro Murloc deck, but yeah, it's I think I think Murloc Shaman will have a really strong possibility to kick off with this quest, but once again, it's very hard to see just how can you squeeze the early Murlocs and the quest at the same time, and it will probably have to make it become more of like a mid-range deck rather than an all-out aggressive Murloc deck. Right. We have another row card, the Vile Spin Slayer, 5 mana, 3/4 combo, destroy a minion. So, very powerful tempo card, It's unlike Assassinate, it puts a relatively solid body on the board, but you do have to obtain the combo with it, so it's not like a guaranteed effect like Blade of Cthulhu, for example. But rogues do excel with combo cards, with preparations and backstabs and stuff like that. And there's still sap, which many people have complained over and over again about how annoying it is to deal with. And having another card that provides a very cheap way to remove a minion and provide a tempo swing on the board is I don't think the right direction to go to. That's just my opinion of it. Now it's slightly weaker than Sap in certain regards because Sap also plays around Death Rattle. That's usually the problem with or the advantage with like sap, because you can sap like a Tyrion or Sylvanas, and you don't have to deal with a death rattle. Whereas in this case, you will have to deal with whatever death rattle the minion that you kill has, but it fully removes the minions, so you don't have the possibility, the problem with the, like if you're playing against a control deck, that they just replay it if you're playing like a more slow variant. So it's a very powerful card. How much it will see play, it does remain debatable, because it's, it's a very powerful removal, but in like a tempo oriented deck, I'm not sure how much you want something like this. But yeah, it's very hard to formulate what kind of deck this card will be seen in, but it's I do feel like it's a very powerful card, so it might see play. If not in constructed, then it'll definitely see play in arena if you can get to pick it. It's an epic card, so you're not gonna get it that often. But if you see this card in arena, then I think it's almost an insta pick. It's like a very powerful tempo removal that you shouldn't just pass by. Finally, the last card that has been released in this batch of cards is the Volcanosaur, and that's a 7 mana 5/6 Battlecry, adapt, then adapt. So it's a very cool little play that they have done there. They allow you to adapt it twice, so you can get it to like a, you can get the health and attack buff, so you can get it to like a 7 mana 8/9, which is technically above average for stat wise, and it's also a beast. You can combine it with like taunt and divine shield, which is like a slightly stronger Sunwalker. You can combine it with like divine shield and the thing that makes it immune to spells, and I do think that's the really key thing to get here. If you can get the thing that makes it immune to as to spells, then pretty much every sort of like other combination makes it relatively powerful. Even poisonous, more attack, more health, taunt, divine shield makes it a lot more powerful to deal with. And apparently, I am seeing over here in the FAQ that there will be a golden Volcanosaur given away as a login reward once the Journey to Ongoro releases. So that's interesting, kind of nice from them, but you know, it's nice from them. It's a cool car, but I'm not sure if it's good enough for constructed because of the same reason as I've mentioned. It's very slow, and against control, they might already have a removal for it. So you really have to place your bets on getting like the spell immunity, I guess, kind of card. It's also a lot more busted in like wild, if I may say that as well. Because you can combine it for like 10 mana with Bran and get like a 4 adaptation monstrosity out there that has like extra stats and immunity and taunt and divine shield, and just plow all the adaptation out there and put it on the board. It could be kind of like a hilarious combination, but yeah, that's about it. I don't know. Huh. Maybe it will see some play a little bit, as I said, in some very fringe situations, but the meta will have to slow down considerably for that, and you have to hit the spell immunity for this to work. Anyway, yeah, that being said, this has been this batch of cards from Journey to Ongoro. Very cool, very interesting cards. I do see a few archetypes sort of like coming out, Death Rattle Priest, Discard Zoo, Murloc Shaman. So Elemental Shaman as well can work. So it remains to be seen what we have for the few other classes. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you next time. They're going to make. Bye bye.